Video, which starred Phil Jobling and Grace Evans from Southern Farming Systems. Phil, can you just give us a quick overview and reminder about the barley, wheat and evaluation trials that GrainSearch is currently running?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Yeah, I think it starred Grace and I was the co-actor in that one. Yeah, look, every year GrainSearch tries to use SFS Inverleigh for its main trial site, and it's really a fantastic site to have that ability to put our wheat and barleys. And yeah, this year we've got over 136 new wheats in replication, and that takes a lot of space up for, and so we're very thankful that SFS have 3 bays for us, and hopefully next year you've got the same. But really what we try and do is we basically start the process from that video. You could see that we'd hand sown barley. So really you get 5 to 10 to 20 grams at best from quarantine of each line. And then you start building up the seed bank so that you've got enough the following year to do full replication. And some of our wheats from last year, we only got from a few plants another 20-30 grams back, so we're still in half plots. So it takes a while to build up the seed just to even check whether they're good, but you can knock them out on disease. So of that 284 last year that people saw at the site, at least half were knocked out just on disease alone, that they just didn't have the right disease profile that we were looking for, or maturity, because some of them were even later than Manning, and that just wasn't going to cut the mustard. Yeah, so that's what the trial was, or not trial, our evaluations are all about, is building up the seed, replicating it, and then taking the best after about a season or two, and then doing more of that replication at Junee, Tasmania, WA, and Rapania. So we just keep building up the profile, the best of the best, keep moving on. Every year, all of those samples that we've got enough 400 grams for barley, we send it off to Barrett Burston for micro malting. And then we also use that data to help select. If we've got 10 different lines that all have exactly the same yield, then maybe the top 5 malt results make your selection from that. And so those 5 in that group just drop off because their malt's not good enough profile. And then you might look at those 5 and say which one had the best disease or the best architecture, and then you might drop 1 or 2 of those. So out of 100 of the new barleys this year, in that by a year and a half later, we'll probably only have 20 left, simply because of micro malting results, disease scoring, yield profile. So that's the basic steps that we take. And in the video, I mentioned 1727B, the barley. I've got a seed block running at the moment, and that's well ahead of my decision to commercialise, but it's building up enough seed that if you do make a decision, then next year on a farm, that 300-400 kilograms will be put on the farm, built up to another level of seed, while you start to introduce it to the malting accreditation process. So you take gambles. We've had plenty in the last couple of years that haven't made it. We've had beer, the short-term one, that was heading really well, but then just in the field, up in the area in the Mallee where it was meant to go, just couldn't deliver the consistency. So that couldn't trust it to each year deliver what farmers wanted consistently. It had good malt. There's no problem there. It had passed stage 1, but I couldn't honestly let it go out into the field. Rattler before that was doing really well in the paddock, had good disease profile, had nice malt, and then they brewed it and it had terrible beer. So what do you do? So all of that investment's just gone. So I've still got Rattler seed up in the shed at PGG Wrightson's in Melbourne, because I just don't have the heart to throw it out, but it just sits there and you go, oh, well, if anyone likes hazelnut flavoured beer, I can give you a Rattler variety.
So has anyone got any questions out there for Phil? I think you've covered off on my first question, what makes breeding in the HRZ different from other environments, apart from the greater need for disease resistance? What other factors are we looking for?
Well, of course it's yield predominantly. So each of those plots, you know, when you've got a replication, the best of 100, the best 20 that yield the best are more likely to be ones you select. But from that, you've still got to look at disease and maturity. It's no point having a great yielder if it does sit way outside of the parameters that you're normally going to expect. But it also is the variability at the moment of the climates that what shaped up 2 years ago or 3 years ago in 2016 harvest as the best harvest ever, you know, a year or two later just fell back down to being average. So you can get caught out picking a winner in a really good season, and alternatively you can get caught out more often these days picking one that seems to do okay in the decile 4 and 5s, but then when you get a decile 7 or 8, it just leaves you wanting, and that's really hard to choose. Do you go for it, knowing that the climate's more heading towards decile 5s, or do you stick it out and go yield is king in decile 7 or 8s? And that's why I have to spread them from Junee down to Tasmania to try and pick likely scenarios. I will share a screen, and Frank, if you're still there, I've got a picture that you might be able to help me with. I'll just...
It's coming up, it's just a bit slow. So we've got your diseased leaf on the screen.
Yeah. Frank, if you're there, I've got spot form of net blotch, I've got net form of net blotch on leaves, and I've got scald on leaves. And I can score them, but this is on 60% of all of my barleys, and I can't score it because it's not rust, and it's not spot form, and it's not scald, and it's not net form, and I just have no idea what it is.
Yeah, Phil. Frankie, I don't think I've seen it before. Sure, it's not some, could be physiological, or even looks like it could be insect damage. You could give it a score and try and find out what it is later. Maybe contact CropSafe up in Horsham, and they could see if it's any antibiotic problems. But yeah, look, I haven't seen that one before.
So would can I address that by sending them some samples up to Horsham?
Sure.
Yeah.
They're,
okay.
they're on the lookout for unusual things.
Yep. All right.
Their brief is to spot any exotics before they get widespread, and yeah.
It's on a lot of different lines from both Denmark and other places, so it's not related to one particular type or...
no, I get that. Yeah.
Rosalind is the only one that, or Rosalind and about 10 of my 100 are the only ones completely free of this physiological effect.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'd send it up to CropSafe and see what they think. But I haven't seen that one before.
Okay. I'm just, oh gee.
You've stopped sharing your screen.
Yeah, I know.
Phil.
I'm just flicking through to. We've just got one more image to share, and it's just a query on. Oh, this is a wheat, and so I've got of all of those 130 odd wheats, I've got a group of wheats that seem to be, and we've discussed it amongst ourselves internally. Again, it's not rust. It's not septoria. It seems to be that quite a few of them are expressing the YR18 gene, and so they've got a lot of yellow tipping on their big flag leaves, and even the flag leaves all split. So you can see a plot next to it, a variety that's pretty unaffected, and then I've got quite a few that have this effect. So yeah, they're the things that we certainly have to keep a monitor on, and maybe they need to be thrown out even if they do 10 tonnes, because it doesn't look very pretty. But it's, yeah, that's all the issues of evaluations every year, that something throws up something new.
So when, for example, those plots, you will be able to find out whether that yellowing of the leaf has affected yield from those results, won't you?
Well, all four, if they're in replication, all 4 of the plots of that particular line have all of that yellowing effect. So I won't know the potential yield if it didn't have it, but I can compare pretty similar lines, and if all the green ones have much better yield potential than all the ones with the yellow scoring, then yes, you can sort of pick the trend that that's had an effect on yield. But if I get a group of ones that have been scored with that yellowing effect and they're all in the top bracket, then does it affect yield? Is it something to throw them out on, appearance alone? But it seems to be the expression of the resistance gene. And yeah.
Anyone got any more questions for Phil?
Yeah, Phil, I was just wondering how the yield of your numbered line compared against nitro.
1727B is probably a fraction behind nitro for total top end yield, but where I found it better was that in 2017 it was a lot tougher around Rapagna, nitro and Bottler did. So it did have a back end of toughness that pleased us, and it did look one of the better ones. In 2017 that was a 2 tonne, 2.5 tonne yield tops at Rapagna in 2017. So it was really tough, and to be one of the better ones at a really tough site on a tough year in really heavy soil gave us the decision to give it a go and get to a further point before we even get mold accreditation. Of course, where it's better than nitro is that it's going to get mold accreditation. It will pass mold accreditation if we put it through, because it's nearly as good or the same as Bottler. So it's a very good malting variety. So I'd rather have something knowing that it's got a back end potential in a tougher year than having something that can beat Planet in the field in the best year. Because
yeah, thanks. And I'd also,
sorry, go on.
I'd just like to make the comment, the little clip is probably the best advertisement for the value of paying royalties that I've seen in a long time. And whether you obviously are bringing in varieties from overseas, and I was wondering whether some of the other seed companies could put something together about the process behind breeding a line, just so growers have got some idea of the complexities of delivering a variety.
Oh, thank you, Mark, because yes, it's very topical that the Endpoint Royalty Committee is working really hard and spending a fair bit of money on a marketing campaign to try and regenerate the interest across Australia in endpoint royalties and the reason to consistently pay them. And I think what we've picked up in a trend is that perhaps it's consistent declaration of your tonnages rather than not wanting to pay them. And if we can do that, then that's great, because it is a lengthy process. And when I get 100 barleys through from New Zealand, which has come from 500 out of Denmark, and so New Zealand cull them down to the best 100, and then I get them. That line, that group has probably come from a 15 or 20,000 lines, crosses. So you know, I get the pointy end. So if you look at Intergrain and AGT, that's what they're doing every year, is 30,000 crosses of lots of different things to get down to having 2 or 3 varieties a year to release. And it takes them just as long as me, because you have to keep proving that they work. You have to get consistent data from your malting if it's a barley, or your milling if it's a wheat, and you can't skip processes to get the variety commercially released, and it's there's no easy process. Perhaps Planet and it's nothing wrong with it. Perhaps Planet was the only one that we didn't see the full process, because it had already proved itself so well elsewhere that they had the confidence to just turn the tap on in Australia and go for broke. While they were trialing it, they were also building up seed and getting everything ready. So that was a faster release, but generally it's 8 to 10 years before you see anything out of one of those plots behind me.
And thanks for saying that, Phil, because there's a lot of young faces on these screens now that don't realise that when we started Southern Farming Systems, there was no varieties for the HRZ in Australia. As a matter of fact, GRDC didn't even recognise there was a HRZ in Australia. So your company and your ongoing, and there's other companies as well, and as you well know, Phil, that's one of the reasons why we started GrainSearch, to try and make sure that at least we were trying to get the sort of varieties that we need in the zone that is now a highly recognised zone in Australia that nobody wanted to know about at the end of the 90s.
And now you've got the big boys, AGT and Intergrain, interested, and the only way they're interested in is that there is an outlet to get endpoint royalties from it.
Yeah.
So for
really
Tasmania,
important that we keep spreading that message. You're absolutely correct.
So for Tasmania, the real change came when XLD and the other grain buyer down there, gone out of my head, Puana. So when they started to actually auto-deduct and there was genuine endpoint royalties coming in consistently, it meant that there was a better outcome from feed grain production, because it was being stored at those facilities and then endpoint royalties deducted. And without endpoint royalties, Intergrain and AGT still wouldn't be interested in the HRZ, no matter what the yield, because if you don't get money, you can't keep funding that beast called R&D.